From the creator of Makia comes a story about a literature club that comes across the topic of sex through one of their reading sessions. From there, the characters begin to become aware of different feelings and come to terms with how different people can become growing up. The main instance of this is experienced through Kazusa Onodera, who starts to take romantic interest in her childhood friend. The club all have various takeaways on this topic, like Sonozaki, who is an uptight and pretty strict person who looks down on sex, or Hongo, an ero novelist who is criticized by her editor for unrealistic writing. This will be a lovely drama about growing up and finding out what it means to love or lust after someone. I think it'll interest us as to finding out how each of these characters develop with their newfound feelings. What you should consider are these, however. There is a student and teacher relationship that is hinted throughout, with some of the dialogue being troublesome or maybe even too perverted at times. At one point, there is also a discussion about a certain pedophile, and from what I felt, treated it pretty nonchalantly, but doesn't come up other than at one time. There are also, from what you can guess, situations with characters not being upfront with their feelings, but given the story, that'll be up to whoever goes into this and how they like those type of romances. Hajime, who's bullied for being an otaku and attracting the class idol, is abruptly summoned to another world along with his entire class. Compared to everyone else's exceptional abilities, he receives very average stats, causing him to be seen as useless to everyone, which adds to his mistreatment. Despite that, however, he doesn't bring himself to hate anyone and even tries to make himself useful. And then the story goes from 0 to 100. After an event that separates him, Hajime has to survive by himself using his ability that was considered only common, and as stated in the title, he becomes quite overpowered. He does take on a quite edgy and stern persona, but from the afterwards, it looks like the author was a chunibyo, which might have had some influence. There's a bit of gore as well, and while not being far enough to see if it becomes a total harem, I got up to the point where the girl on the cover is added in, who is quite the legal lolly material, and another being a fanservice Raphtalia counterpart. After humanity is frozen in stone, both Senku and Taiju, our main characters of the story, are the first to be freed supposedly. The development finds them relying on Senku's science background to cure everyone and find out what happened the day they were turned to stone. The first person they turn back, however, turns out becoming a murderer who wants to start civilization from the beginning. So with this very mysterious and intriguing premise of saving humanity and the two parties with different methods of doing so, this will be quite the adventure to follow. Though there seems to be a running gag with Taiju being all muscle and no brains, which can be annoying to some if that type of joke runs on too long. Senku also knows just about everything there is to know about creating basically anything, so at most times it does feel like there aren't obstacles other than needing time and materials. And to add to that, there's also some pretty questionable outcomes. Won't say much, but let's say apparently cola can be quite useful. Epic all around, will be great to see this coming along. So when I first came across this manga, I had first thought it'd be similar to something along the lines of cute girls doing cute things anime, with the exception that we get a bunch of fan service while these characters were working out. While not totally wrong, I have to say this series might be pretty entertaining to health nuts or, people with muscle fetishes. In this, with every visit to the gym, Sakura Hibiki and classmate Soryu and Alchemy discuss a bunch of things about exercise, with examples in the manga detailing the form and importance of particular workouts and stretches. I think if anyone is looking for an informational workout anime that just so happens to include hot anime girls, with some pretty damn interesting frames, then this will be it. Just don't go expecting any serious story, as you can expect the structure to be a pretty simple one. Also be aware that this is based off a manga that's categorized with the ecchi tag, and I can pretty much confirm it, but there are still some pretty comedic scenes with some interesting art that might still reel you in. Okay, take the idea of firefighters, right? And then amplify it by a trillion. Then you got Fire Force. The gist is that you've got people who become what's called infernals, who combust instantaneously into fire monsters, and to defeat them, there's a force created to fight them specifically. It's quite interesting, as apparently there are different attributes depending on the generation they come from, with the first being, the infernals as they're called, the second gen being those who can slightly control the flame, and third gens like our main character Shinra and his rival Arthur, who can fully control it. It takes on a very heroic theme with our main character in that he's falsely accused of burning his little brother and mother at a young age, to which he decides that at all costs he's going to become a hero and avenge them to find out what really happened that day. The story is filled with very interesting characters containing an atmosphere of distrust surrounding the other companies, with 8 members being a really energetic and fun bunch like Ozemaki, who I just love for her fierceness towards everyone. I thought it was pretty cool learning about what everyone's able to do in their respective companies, as we'll get to see that it's not all just fireballs and shit, but that depending on the flame, a bit more can be done. There's also a few cliche fan service moments, but overall it's piqued my interest, so hoping the same for you. The story finds Uenoyama Ritsuka coming upon a boy named Sato Mafio, who he finds lying at the top of the school staircase cradling a guitar. They quickly become acquainted, leading to Mafio's addition in Ritsuka's band upon discovery of his singing ability and his own perseverance to learn guitar. However, Mafio's background contains hardships of dealing with a past relationship and the events that led to the end of it. What I got from the certain depictions was how music kind of acted as an outlet for Mafia, which is a pretty relatable reaction if you ask me. Not only does it focus on Ritsuka questioning if he's worthy of Mafia's grace, but excitingly enough, we get to experience the other members' relationships. Things to look out for here is that the content does deal with suicide and looks to detail both Ritsuka and Mafia's attempts to lift themselves back up and open up to each other. While the music aspect is there, I found in my current spot that it was more of a romantic drama and tends to focus more on that. In this isekai, two best friends, Taichi and Rin, are summoned to a world where they find out they're pretty much overpowered magicians. Nothing really new there. However, soon enough, they learn that power isn't everything, and without the right skills, will be given more trouble than they can handle. I found this interesting, primarily because of the feelings between the two leads. So before being summoned, a third friend had been with them and apparently had feelings for Rin. Taichi, who was supportive towards those two getting together, takes a protective role over Rin with the resolve to get her back home safely, with Rin hinting that she actually might have feelings for him. I really enjoyed the care they showed each other, and when things get harsh for them, it will be entertaining to see how they pull through, especially with an unexpected guest showing up to grant them assistance. For the most part, from the amount I've read, is we get the usual format of, getting quests from a guild to get by, with the eventual endgame resulting in them finding out who summoned them. It is what you'd expect from an isekai with your, OPMCs, but I overall still think it'll be a delightful one. What anyone considering the show should keep in mind is that I'd say Taichi is a bit dense, considering he was rooting for Rin to get together with the friend they left, but I'm curious to see if anything develops between them. There are other women, of course, that enter the scene, though I doubt at my point in the story becomes a harm. Don't quote me on that though. These shows, as predictable as some make it out to be, can still be quite unpredictable. Quite intrigued by this one, can't wait to see the adaptation. Exactly as the title suggests, the story presented in Wasteful Days of High School Girl is, high school girls wasting days. This is a comedy show about a group of friends with specific traits about them, which leads to certain nicknames and how their high school days revolve around it. For instance, the first few characters introduced are Satsuchi, who is called Ota for her BL otaku hobbies, or Sagenomiya, who is called Robo for her lack of emotion and blunt comments. There's also Tanaka, who is called Baka because, that speaks for itself, I guess. There is really no plot to the story, and as a shorts comedy from its presentation, so I can definitely see this becoming one of those shows to relax to for the week if you're in need of a laugh. Because really, the scenarios in this are completely random at times, so yeah, don't expect anything too serious out of this. I don't think it'd be too far-fetched to say that it's almost like daily lives of high school boys. Some characters in some of the comedy though may not click with people. For instance, Yamamoto is a Chunibyo, which I know is a character type that some people aren't too fond of, or Tanaka, who might be annoying at times, but especially if you enjoyed something like Asobi Asobase, which is also pretty similar, I would say, this show will be certainly a joyful viewing. I'm really happy I got to invest myself in this one, as we've got a sort of space exploration survival story on our hands here. The situation is that a group of high schoolers are to be sent to a planet called Planet Camp for survival training as preparation for adulthood for some reason. As soon as they land, they are instantly transported by a ball of light to space. Luckily, an abandoned spaceship that conveniently was right where they were teleported to was able to provide them shelter. However, many of its parts, particularly the communication systems, are discovered to have been recently removed. So there is mystery that questions the convenience of their scenario, the reasoning behind their journey, and even what that ball was supposed to be that transported them. But moving forward from that, we get a group of characters that unfortunately will have to learn to get along with each other, as their journey will take quite a long time, I think 3 months as it was pointed out. With this in mind, they take it upon themselves to explore other planets in an attempt to collect more resources. But they'll of course find out that there are other creatures in the world that might not be so friendly, as well as having to avoid being swallowed up by that ball of light again. This is one of the more unique ones of the queue that I'm thrilled to see adapted. Just look at those covers, right? Damn, they're hot. This one takes place in an alternate civil war where the North used magic to create a group of soldiers that harnessed monstrous forms and power. After peace was established, many of them were unable to fit back into normal life, however, causing them to harm or inconvenience the very people they helped protect. Hank, one of these soldiers, is on a mission to kill all who were part of the squad due to a pact made stating that those who lost their way would have to die. Many of them, of course, don't go along nicely with their quest, but it's through their motives and backstory where we question what determines a person's humanity and self-worth in correspondence to their actions. Shawl, who is the daughter of one of the ones killed by Hank, sympathizes with the beast, believing that they are still human inside and don't deserve to be killed. In her travels with Hank, she seeks the meaning of her father's death, as well as try to come to terms with what the soldiers are now. monsters. There are a few fan service scenes, albeit in times of crisis, and while having the resolve to fight Shawl from a different perspective can be seen as annoying with their perseverance to keep from killing all the incarnates, as well as can be the damsel in distress type. However, I do believe she becomes more independent and a strong character, as we'll see in her encounters with the other soldiers. Another note is that there is a slight time skip, which I know some people might dislike. I don't know what to tell you. A boy gets a love letter with panties attached to it, in which we get a kind of Cinderella situation where he has to find out who it belongs to with some glorious amounts of fan service. Yes, even a little sister is included. It reminds me a little bit of My Sisters Among Them, though not strictly about, the little sister, but it's still a fun story. If you're lacking in hentai for whatever reason, then give it a go. Be warned, it might be a bit too stimulating, or not, might just be me. Given the circumstances though, our protagonist actually isn't too dense and actually has to be an active one since he has to find out who likes him. The situations that spring from doing so are straight up eccentric, and if you ask me, hella erotic. Just have to say, this girl, woo! And this girl, no. If you don't like ecchi harems, especially if the inciting incident sounds too weird to take in, this will be a skip. As for me, Yuko Yoshida is gifted with demon-like abilities in appearance due to it running through an ancestor who is part of a clan of darkness. Weirdly enough, she is able to interact with that ancestor while asleep and might potentially turn her into an otaku, as she's able to offer things like anime and food. Being a demon, all of a sudden you can expect that of course there's also a hero, in this case magical girl, who rather than tries to defeat her seems to just keep tabs as they both go to the same school. Expect from this an adorable anime about a girl dealing with her newfound abilities. The art is also pretty darn cute and might be a good replacement after Hitori Bochi ends. Another one of the isekai showing this season, Maou-sama Retry finds Akira Ono being transported into the game of a company he works at before the servers are to be shut down. He takes the role of his avatar, Mao, who many in the game's world find as a threatening force. He also stumbles upon a rip-off Rem, who he in a way fathers by caring for her, and like many before him, tries to find his way out, but not without establishing just how powerful he is and what opportunities he brings to the table. We do have cases of the dude coming in to rescue characters with almighty force, and some interesting abilities like being able to control multiple avatars and summon other characters. His relationships may be found to be disturbing, since his character he takes on is kind of much older than his IRL self, and the women he meets are, well, pretty young and of course take a liking towards him. So I'm gonna be honest, at first I thought this would be an isekai off of the first few pages, but nope, a bunch of kids are just kidnapped, brought to an island, and forced to play some games. The Ones Within contains a story where a group of Let's Players who specialize in specific genres find themselves participating in an IRL livestream where they must complete different games with the goal of achieving 100 million viewers in order to be let go. With this, we get a great cast of characters with different personalities, my favorite being Iride, whose positive and friendly attitude just makes me fall for him, to be honest. And as we'll see, I'm not the only one. As they progress, we'll discover that the games can range from being quite harmless to freakishly insane that you'll probably die. Each character also seems to be secretive or has ulterior motives to being in the games, and as we'll find out, others may not be so trustworthy. There are times where I felt like the tone would swiftly shift from being suspenseful and dark to more friendly and uplifting. Regardless, I really enjoyed the uniqueness of this bunch and how well they played off each other, and additionally, even the type of games that were presented to them. With Silverlink animating this and just how much I enjoyed it while I was reading, I can't wait to see them beautiful boys animated. Oh, and Roro too. Karen's okay, I guess. After getting hot girls working out, what do we get next? Hot girls surviving on an island after crashing in the sea. Yeah, quite depressing, but this was both mildly disturbing yet informative. I guess learning something is easier when cute anime girls do it. Anyways, throughout Sounan desu ka, a group of girls find themselves relying on a girl they saved, Onishima Homare, who conveniently, or I don't know if it's conveniently, but tragically, just so happens to have been in other accidents, including the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, etc, etc. Yeah, not only that, but her father also taught her countless survival skills. So luckily for the group, they are able to adapt to their condition pretty quickly and survive, albeit not without some hesitation, as early on many of the methods provided to supply, food and water are some of the most disgusting things I've seen. So while hoping to not ever in my entire life have to resort to these, I guess it's great to know. I can't vouch for the accuracy of the tips or information, but it'll be similar to Done Better, where the adventures will kind of end up explaining things like how to get water, what foods are edible, and how to maintain yourself through dehydration and such. Well, yeah, there will be fan service. This anime will have quite a bit to offer, and some of the nasty stuff she does is for survival. Homare is shaping up to be best girl already for me. So, Tejina Senpai will be another short form anime, sadly, but I think it's reasonable as it'll be based off a gag manga. Our format given is, well, the senpai will try to teach or perform a trick for her assistant, which will either end up in failure or end up in failure, which for some reason leads to fan service. Some may find it repetitive, as that does make up the majority of the progression, but with 12 minutes an episode, I'm sure we'll all be done jacking it. To be honest, it's quite cute though, seeing Senpai try so hard at magic, and Jesus Christ, I swear with assistance opportunities, this manga could go a totally different way when a reader has seen too much hentai. So I actually ended up binging the whole first volume of Do You Love Your Mom? And on one hand, yes, the story does find the main heroine being the MC's mom, and the game they're sucked into seems to prioritize the goal of strengthening the bond between a mother and child. But on the flip side of that, there are slight incestuous undertones in some scenes that I can, see bothering some people. However, that's more of a situational appearance, and as mentioned, it does seem to string along this message of, how important a mom and her relationship with their child is. So unlike what I'll talk about in the next anime, I think this one more so will strictly keep the bizarreness to fan service and nothing more, as long as with the lighthearted adventure story of a mom and son trying to get along together. Masato does get accompanied by a cute and shy lolly named Porta, and a tsundere sage called Wise, who's bad at magic with serious mommy issues. Again, there will be slight incestuous themes, mainly stemming from Masato's pervertedness and just the avertness affection Mamako shows him. Also yes, from what I can tell, they are blood related. Let's just hope for the best, whichever that may be, depending on who you are. So I'm going to be blunt here and say this story as it develops will not be for everyone and does possess a very controversial theme. From the title, you can guess correctly in determining that our main character Dale takes custody of an exiled demon girl named Latina and decides to be like a father to her. However, I will warn others that here it does become an age gap love story. So take that into consideration if you want to give the series a go. From what I can expect though, the anime may only cover a couple of volumes and play up the father-daughter relationship only, so you may choose to tag along for that, but just be wary of its progression. If you do decide to give the show a go, it'll mostly be watching Latina grow and learn and bond with Dale, who from the looks of it can be quite the doting parent. The restaurant they live in, owned by Kenneth and Rita, also has quite the charm to its character, as we see the regulars kind of care for the little girl as well, and it's kind of where Latina begins working. So for the most part, it's pretty slice of life for the beginning, and we'll just leave it at that, not even think about it. A story about Vikings and war. Thorfinn, our main character, is a hot-tempered young lad who works for a group of Vikings led by Askeladd, his father's killer. We'll find at times that Askeladd will actually be a helping hand in Thorfinn's development as a warrior, as while his combat skills are to be feared, and it will show for itself because god damn that kid is violent. He does lack in something that would just be the cherry on top. If you've been enjoying time period pieces like Demon Slayer or Dororo, this anime might interest you as well. Be warned, as it's pretty graphic in terms of its violence and gore from, my reaction earlier, and does contain moments of sexual violence. And with that series concluding everything, let's have a great summer season. See you guys.